The clock above the coffee machine read 9:45 p.m. as Sarah Beth Coleman wiped down the last booth in Coleman's country kitchen. Her feet ached in worn sneakers that had seen too many double shifts, and her blonde hair had escaped its ponytail hours ago. The diner, once the heart of Harmony Creek, Tennessee, now felt more like a burden she couldn't escape. She counted the crumpled bills from her apron pocket. $17.38 for 14 hours of work. Not nearly enough to cover Lucy's school supplies, let alone the stack of overdue bills waiting upstairs in their cramped apartment above the diner. The bell above the front door chimed softly, and Sarah Beth looked up to see the last customer of the night. A well-dressed man with dark hair and kind eyes sat in the corner booth, reading what appeared to be a veterinary journal. He'd been nursing the same cup of coffee for an hour, occasionally glancing toward the window where her 6-year-old daughter Lucy's horse drawings were taped with cheerful determination. "More coffee?" Sarah Beth asked, approaching with the pot. "Please." His voice was gentle, with just a hint of an accent she couldn't place. "Those are beautiful drawings in the window." Sarah Beth followed his gaze to Lucy's artwork, crayon horses in every color, running through meadows that existed only in a little girl's imagination. "My daughter Lucy, she's horse crazy, though she's never actually seen one up close." The stranger smiled, and something in his expression made Sarah Beth pause. There was a sadness there, carefully hidden but unmistakable to someone who recognized the weight of loss. "She has real talent," he said quietly. "The way she captures their spirit, their freedom, that's not something you can teach." When Sarah Beth returned from the kitchen after washing the last of the dishes, she found the corner booth empty, except for 3 items arranged carefully on the table. A $50 bill lay folded beneath a business card that read, "Dr. Michael Brennan, DVM, Brennan Animal Hospital." Beside it, a handwritten note in careful script. "Your daughter's drawing of horses is beautiful. She has real talent." Sarah Beth's hands trembled as she picked up the offerings. $50 was more than she'd made in tips all week, but it was the note that made her heart race. How had this stranger seen not just Lucy's drawings, but something deeper? The front door chimed again, and Dr. Brennan returned, having apparently forgotten something. He found Sarah Beth standing frozen at his table, staring at his gifts. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I didn't mean to presume. It's just, your daughter's art reminded me of someone I used to know. Someone who saw the world with that same wonder. Why?" Sarah Beth's voice was barely a whisper. "Why would you leave this much money?" "Mike." She found herself thinking of him as Mike, rather than the formal Dr. Brennan, stepped closer, his hands clasped behind his back. "I'm new in town, took over the old veterinary practice from Dr. Morrison. I've been watching this place, watching you work. You care about people, really care. That's rare." He paused, seeming to weigh his words carefully. "I need help at the practice. Bookkeeping, client relations. Someone who understands that healing isn't just about medicine, it's about compassion. The pay would be fair, and you could bring Lucy after school. There are always gentle animals that need attention." Sarah Beth clutched the $50 bill, feeling the texture of hope and possibility. "I don't know anything about veterinary work. You know about caring for others. You know about putting someone else's needs before your own. The rest I can teach." Before Sarah Beth could respond, her phone buzzed with a text message. The name on the screen made her stomach clench. Brad Coleman. Her ex-husband's message was brief and brutal. "Heard business is slow. Drop the child support case or I'll file for custody." "You can't afford to fight me." The color drained from Sarah Beth's face. Mike noticed immediately. "Is everything all right? I have to think about your offer," she managed, tucking the money and business card into her apron. "Thank you for this, really, but I need to get upstairs to Lucy." She was halfway to the stairs when Mike called out softly, "Sarah Beth?" Sometimes the biggest risk is not taking one at all. Upstairs in their small apartment, Sarah Beth found Lucy fast asleep, surrounded by more horse drawings. Her daughter's peaceful face was illuminated by the bedside lamp, golden hair spread across the pillow like spun sunlight. Sarah Beth sat on the edge of the bed, studying Mike's business card by the dim light. $50 could buy Lucy new school shoes. Part-time work at a veterinary practice could change everything. But Brad's threat echoed in her mind, a familiar poison that made her doubt every decision. Trusting another man, especially one who seemed too good to be true, felt like stepping off a cliff. "Mama," Lucy's sleepy voice startled her. "I'm here, baby. Go back to sleep. I saw you talking to the nice man. He liked my horses." Sarah Beth's heart skipped. "You were supposed to be in bed, I know. But he had kind eyes, Mama, like Grandpa's eyes in the pictures." After Lucy drifted back to sleep, Sarah Beth sat at their tiny kitchen table, calculator in hand. Even with her diner wages and the occasional tip, they were falling behind. The rent on the apartment, Lucy's school expenses, groceries, it never seemed to balance. Mike's job offer could be the answer to her prayers, but Brad's threats made everything complicated. The next morning brought the familiar chaos of the breakfast rush. Coleman's country kitchen filled with the usual crowd, farmers heading to work, retirees nursing coffee and gossip, families grabbing pancakes before school. Sarah Beth moved through the routine with practiced efficiency, pouring coffee and taking orders while her mind churned. Mrs. Hawkins, the town's self-appointed source of all information, held court at her usual table by the window. "Did you all hear about the new veterinarian? Dr. Brennan, I think his name is. Seems awfully young to be taking over Morrison's practice. Heard he came from Atlanta," added Mr. Peterson, cutting into his eggs. "Must be running from something to end up in a place like Harmony Creek." "Maybe he just wanted small-town life," suggested Mrs. Fletcher. Though her tone indicated she found this unlikely, the speculation continued until the bell above the door chimed and Mike himself entered. The conversation died as every eye in the diner turned to watch him choose a table. He selected the same corner booth from the night before, offering Sarah Beth a warm smile as she approached with coffee. "Good morning," he said quietly. "I hope I didn't overstep last night." "You didn't," Sarah Beth replied, though her voice was uncertain. "I'm still thinking about your offer. Take all the time you need. There's no pressure." Their conversation was interrupted by the violent slam of the front door. Brad Coleman stormed in, his face flushed with anger and something else, the telltale signs of a morning that had started with a bottle. Sarah Beth's stomach dropped as he approached the counter. "Sarah Beth, we need to talk now. I'm working, Brad. Whatever this is about can wait." "No, it can't," his voice carried across the suddenly silent diner. "I heard you're entertaining men while my daughter is upstairs. That's not the kind of environment Lucy should be in." The accusation hit Sarah Beth like a physical blow. She was acutely aware of every customer watching, their breakfast conversations forgotten in favor of this unexpected drama. "You don't know what you're talking about, don't I?" Brad's eyes found Mike in the corner booth. "Who's your friend there?" "Another customer you're getting too friendly with." Mike rose slowly from his seat, his movements calm and deliberate. "Sir, I think you should lower your voice. There are families here." Brad whirled to face him. "And you should mind your own business. This is between me and my wife." "Ex-wife," Sarah Beth corrected, her voice shaking with suppressed anger. "And this is my place of business. You need to leave." "Your place of business?" Brad laughed bitterly. "This dump is failing, Sarah Beth. Everyone knows it. How are you going to take care of Lucy when you can't even keep the lights on?" The cruelty in his words was calculated, designed to humiliate her in front of the entire town. Sarah Beth felt tears threatening, but refused to give him the satisfaction. "Get out, Brad. I'll get out when I'm ready. But first, let me make something clear." He turned to address the entire diner. "My ex-wife here thinks she can do whatever she wants, with whoever she wants, while she's supposed to be caring for our daughter. Well, I've got news for you, Sarah Beth. I'm filing for custody. Lucy deserves better than this." The sound of small footsteps on the stairs made everyone turn. Lucy appeared in her pajamas, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Mama, why is everyone yelling?" The sight of his daughter should have softened Brad, but instead it seemed to fuel his anger. "See, she's exposing our child to whatever drama she's got going on now." Lucy ran to Sarah Beth, wrapping her arms around her mother's waist. "Mama, why is Daddy so angry? Did I do something wrong?" The innocence in Lucy's voice broke something in Sarah Beth's chest. Her little girl was blaming herself for the adult's behavior, and that was unforgivable. "No, baby, you didn't do anything wrong. Daddy's just having a hard day." Mike stepped forward, his voice gentle but firm. "Mr. Coleman, I think your daughter has heard enough. Maybe we could take this conversation outside." "Don't tell me how to handle my family," Brad snapped, "and stay away from them. Both of them." He stormed out as suddenly as he'd arrived, leaving behind a diner full of uncomfortable witnesses and a little girl who didn't understand why her father's presence always brought pain. Mrs. Hawkins was the first to break the silence. "Well," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "Sarah Beth, honey, are you all right?" The sympathy in the older woman's voice nearly undid Sarah Beth's composure. She nodded quickly, scooping Lucy into her arms. "Everything's fine. Let me get Lucy back upstairs, and I'll be right back to refill everyone's coffee." As she carried her daughter toward the stairs, she heard Mike's quiet voice addressing the diner. "I'm Dr. Michael Brennan, the new veterinarian. I was just discussing some business with Sarah Beth, nothing more. I hope you'll all give her the respect and privacy she deserves." Later that afternoon, despite the morning's humiliation, Sarah Beth found herself standing outside Brennan Animal Hospital. The building was modern and clean, a stark contrast to the faded charm of downtown Harmony Creek. Through the large windows, she could see Mike examining a golden retriever while its owner watched anxiously. The scene reminded her of her father, who'd had the same gentle confidence with both animals and people. Before his heart attack 5 years ago, Coleman's Country Kitchen had been the gathering place for the entire community. Her father had known everyone's name, their struggles, their joys. He'd made the diner more than just a restaurant. He'd made it home. Mike noticed her through the window and gestured for her to come in. The waiting room was warm and welcoming, with comfortable chairs and photos of happy pets covering the walls. Sarah Beth could hear him talking to the dog's owner, his voice patient and reassuring. "Rosie's going to be just fine, Mrs. Patterson. The limp is from a minor strain, nothing serious. Just keep her quiet for a few days, and she'll be back to chasing squirrels in no time." When the grateful owner left with her relieved pet, Mike turned to Sarah Beth with a smile. "I'm glad you came by. Would you like to see the rest of the facility?" He led her through examination rooms equipped with modern technology, a small surgical suite, and boarding areas for animals requiring overnight care. Everything was spotless and organized, but what impressed Sarah Beth most was the obvious care that had gone into making the space comfortable for both animals and their families. "It's beautiful," she said honestly. "Dr. Morrison's old place was, well, it worked, but this is something else entirely. I wanted to create a place where healing could happen," Mike explained. "Not just physical healing, but emotional. Losing a pet is one of the hardest things families go through. They deserve a place that honors that bond." They settled in his office, where Sarah Beth noticed a few personal touches: a photo of Mike with a beautiful border collie, some veterinary journals, and a small framed drawing that looked remarkably like Lucy's horse artwork. "You mentioned bookkeeping and client relations," Sarah Beth began carefully. "What exactly would that involve?" Mike leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "The business side of a practice can be overwhelming. Appointment scheduling, billing, insurance claims, inventory management. But more than that, I need someone who can connect with clients during their most stressful moments. Someone who understands that bringing a sick pet to the vet is about love, not just medicine. I've never worked with animals professionally, but you've worked with people. You've spent years reading their needs, anticipating what they require before they ask. Those skills translate perfectly to veterinary medicine." Sarah Beth found herself warming to the idea, despite her reservations. "What about hours?" "I still need to run the diner, flexible. Mornings, evenings, whatever works for your schedule. And like I said, Lucy would be welcome here after school. I have a feeling she'd love helping with the gentler animals." As if summoned by their conversation, the door chimed, and a familiar voice called out, "Dr. Brennan, are you still here?" Mrs. Fletcher entered with a small cat carrier, her face etched with worry. "It's Whiskers. He hasn't been eating and I'm so afraid." Mike immediately shifted into professional mode. But Sarah Beth noticed how he took a moment to acknowledge Mrs. Fletcher's fear before focusing on the medical issue. He explained each step of his examination in terms she could understand, never dismissing her concerns or making her feel foolish for worrying. Watching him work, Sarah Beth felt something she hadn't experienced in years: genuine admiration for someone's character. Mike wasn't just skilled. He was kind in a way that seemed to come from deep personal experience with loss and healing. When Mrs. Fletcher left with a diagnosis of minor stomach upset and medication that would have Whiskers feeling better within days, Mike turned to Sarah Beth. "What do you think? Still interested in the position?" "I think I'd like to try," Sarah Beth heard herself saying. "Part-time to start, if that's all right. I need to see how it works with the diner." Mike's smile was radiant. "That's perfect. When would you like to start?" "Monday?" "Monday it is." As Sarah Beth walked back to the diner, she felt lighter than she had in months. The extra income would help with bills, and Lucy would love being around the animals. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to hope that things might actually get better. She didn't notice Brad's truck parked across the street from the animal hospital, or see him lowering his camera phone after taking several photos of her leaving Mike's practice. The weekend passed quietly, with Sarah Beth working her regular shifts at the diner while mentally preparing for her new role at the veterinary practice. Lucy was thrilled about the possibility of helping with animals, chattering excitedly about all the different creatures she might meet. Monday morning arrived grey and drizzly, matching Sarah Beth's nervous energy. She dropped Lucy at school with promises that they'd visit the animal hospital that afternoon, then made her way to Brennan Animal Hospital for her first day. Mike greeted her with coffee and a patient smile as he walked her through the computer system, filing procedures and client communication protocols. Sarah Beth found herself picking up the routine quickly, her years of managing the diner's chaos serving her well in organizing appointment schedules and handling multiple phone calls. Their first client was Mr. Henderson with his ancient beagle, Rufus. Sarah Beth watched Mike work, noting how he took time to explain everything to the worried owner, never rushing despite a full schedule. When Rufus needed blood work, Mike showed Mr. Henderson exactly what he was looking for and why, turning a scary procedure into an educational experience. "You're a natural at this," Mike commented during a brief break between appointments. "Mr. Henderson hasn't looked that relaxed during a vet visit in years." "It's not so different from the diner," Sarah Beth replied. "People want to feel heard and understood, whether they're ordering breakfast or worrying about their pet." The afternoon brought Lucy's first visit to the practice. Sarah Beth watched her daughter's eyes widen as Mike introduced her to the gentler boarding animals, a recovering cat named Patches, an elderly rabbit named Benny, and a sweet-tempered ferret called Bandit. Lucy was enchanted, asking a million questions and listening intently to Mike's explanations about animal care. "She's wonderful," Mike told Sarah Beth as Lucy carefully petted Patches under his supervision. "She has an intuitive understanding of animals. That's rare, especially in someone so young." Watching Mike with her daughter, Sarah Beth felt a flutter of something she'd almost forgotten, attraction mixed with genuine respect. Mike treated Lucy like a person, not just a child, answering her questions seriously and involving her in age-appropriate ways. The week flew by in a blur of appointments, phone calls, and gradually increasing confidence. Sarah Beth found herself looking forward to her time at the practice, enjoying the variety and the sense of helping families navigate difficult situations. The extra income was already making a difference, allowing her to buy Lucy new school clothes without checking the bank balance first. It was Friday afternoon when Mike made his confession. Lucy was in the boarding area, reading a book to Patches while the cat recovered from minor surgery. Sarah Beth was updating client files when Mike appeared beside her desk, his expression unusually serious. "Sarah Beth, there's something I need to tell you. Something about why I came to Harmony Creek." She looked up from the computer, noting the tension in his shoulders. "Okay." Mike sat down across from her, his hands clasped tightly together. "I had a daughter, Emma. She was 7 years old, just a little older than Lucy." The past tense hit Sarah Beth like a physical blow. "Had car accident 2 years ago. A drunk driver ran a red light." Mike's voice was steady, but Sarah Beth could see the carefully controlled grief in his eyes. "Emma was in the back seat. My wife was driving. They were coming to pick me up from work because my car was in the shop." "Oh, Mike." Sarah Beth reached across the desk instinctively, covering his hands with hers. "I was successful in Atlanta. Big practice, wealthy clients, everything I thought I wanted. But after the accident, none of it mattered. I couldn't save the 2 people who meant everything to me, so what was the point of saving other people's pets?" He paused, looking toward the boarding area where Lucy's voice could be heard softly reading to Patches. "I came here to hide, really. To find someplace quiet where I could just exist without constantly being reminded of what I'd lost. But then I saw Lucy's drawings in your window, and something about them. They reminded you of Emma. She loved horses too. Never saw a real one, just like Lucy, but she drew them constantly. The same wild, free spirit in every picture." Mike's smile was sad but genuine. "When I saw your daughter's art, it was the first time in 2 years that I felt anything other than grief. It was like Emma was trying to tell me it was okay to care again." Sarah Beth felt tears welling in her eyes. "I'm so sorry for your loss. Thank you. I wanted you to know because working with you and Lucy, being around your family warmth, it's been healing for me in ways I didn't expect. But I also wanted you to understand that my interest in helping you isn't charity. You've given me something precious, hope that life might have meaning again." Before Sarah Beth could respond, Lucy appeared in the doorway. "Mama, Patches fell asleep while I was reading. Dr. Mike, is that good for sick kitties?" "That's very good," Mike replied, his voice completely steady, despite the emotional conversation they'd just shared. "Sleep is when the body does its best healing." That evening, after Lucy was in bed, Sarah Beth sat at her kitchen table thinking about Mike's revelation. The depth of his loss explained so much: his gentleness with grieving pet owners, his instant connection to Lucy's innocent joy, his decision to leave a successful practice for a small-town life. He wasn't running from his past so much as trying to find a way to live with it. She was still processing when her phone rang. Brad's name on the caller ID made her stomach clench. "Sarah Beth, we need to talk. It's late, Brad. Lucy's asleep." "This won't take long. I know about your new job. And your new boyfriend." Sarah Beth's blood ran cold. "I don't know what you're talking about. Don't play dumb. I've got photos of you going in and out of that vet's office. Cozy little family scene with him and Lucy. Makes my case for custody much stronger." "There is no case, Brad. Mike is my employer, nothing more." "Sure he is. That's why you're spending so much time there. That's why he's getting so friendly with my daughter." The possessiveness in Brad's voice was familiar and frightening. Even though their marriage had ended years ago, he still considered Sarah Beth and Lucy his property. "You have no right to dictate who I work for or who Lucy spends time with." "Actually, I do. I'm her father, and I have every right to protect her from your poor judgment. Back off from the veterinarian, Sarah Beth, or I'll make this ugly for everyone involved." The line went dead, leaving Sarah Beth staring at her phone in the dark kitchen. Brad's threats weren't idle. He had connections in town, money for lawyers, and a vindictive streak that knew no bounds. If he decided to make trouble for Mike's practice or challenge her custody of Lucy, he could cause real damage. The next morning brought devastating news. Sarah Beth arrived at the diner to find "Unfit Mother" spray-painted across the front window in bold red letters. Her hands shook as she called the police, though she knew they wouldn't be able to prove Brad was responsible. Officer Martinez was kind, but realistic. "Without witnesses or evidence, there's not much we can do. It could have been anyone with a grudge, but Sarah Beth knew better. This was Brad's warning shot, his way of showing her how easily he could destroy her. Reputation in a small town where gossip traveled faster than facts. She was scrubbing paint remover across the glass when Mike arrived for his usual morning coffee. He took one look at the vandalism and then at her stricken face, immediately understanding the connection. "This is about me, isn't it?" he said quietly. "About us working together. Brad's making threats about custody. He says I'm exposing Lucy to inappropriate situations." Sarah Beth's voice cracked with frustration and fear. Mike was silent for a long moment, watching her work. Finally he said, "Maybe I should step back. Find someone else to help at the practice." "No." The word came out sharper than Sarah Beth intended. "I won't let him control my life anymore. I need this job, Mike, and Lucy loves helping at your practice. But if it puts your custody at risk, then I'll fight. I'm tired of being afraid of Brad's threats." Despite her brave words, Sarah Beth spent the weekend in anxiety, jumping every time her phone rang. Monday brought the consequences she'd been dreading. An official-looking envelope slipped under the diner's door while she was at the animal hospital. The legal papers were dense with terminology she didn't fully understand, but the meaning was clear. Brad was filing for full custody of Lucy, citing unstable living conditions and inappropriate relationships that put the child at risk. The hearing was scheduled for the following Friday. Sarah Beth sank into a chair, the papers trembling in her hands. She didn't have money for a lawyer, didn't have resources to fight Brad's accusations. Worse, she realized that her association with Mike could indeed be twisted to seem inappropriate. A recently divorced woman spending time with a man, bringing her daughter around him regularly. When Mike found her crying in his office that afternoon, she showed him the papers with shaking hands. He read them in silence, his expression growing darker with each page. "This is my fault," he said finally. "If I hadn't offered you the job, hadn't gotten involved with your family—" "Stop." Sarah Beth wiped her eyes roughly. "You've done nothing wrong. Neither have I. But Brad has money and connections, and I'm just a waitress who can barely keep her business afloat." Mike set the papers aside and looked directly at her. "What can I do to help?" "You can stay away from us." The words hurt to say, but Sarah Beth forced them out. "If Brad's lawyers find out about your past, about losing Emma, they'll use it against you. They'll say you're emotionally unstable around children, or that I'm exposing Lucy to someone dealing with traumatic grief. You're protecting me. I'm protecting all of us. Lucy can't lose her home, and you can't lose your practice because of Brad's vindictiveness." Mike started to protest, but Sarah Beth cut him off. "Please, Mike, just for now, until this is resolved. I need to focus on keeping my daughter." That night, Sarah Beth lay awake staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out how to afford a lawyer and wondering if she was making the biggest mistake of her life by pushing Mike away. Lucy had asked 3 times why they weren't going to visit the animals anymore, and each question broke Sarah Beth's heart a little more. The custody hearing arrived grey and cold, matching Sarah Beth's mood as she sat alone at the defendant's table in the Harmony Creek courthouse. Brad had arrived with an expensive-looking lawyer from Nashville, while Sarah Beth had managed to secure a court-appointed attorney who looked overwhelmed and underprepared. Brad's lawyer painted a devastating picture. A struggling single mother who couldn't provide financial stability, who exposed her child to strangers without proper background checks, who prioritized her own social life over her daughter's well-being. The photos of Sarah Beth entering and leaving the animal hospital were presented as evidence of questionable associations. When it came time for Sarah Beth to defend herself, her court-appointed lawyer asked weak questions that barely challenged Brad's narrative. Sarah Beth tried to explain about the job at the veterinary practice, about Lucy's love for animals, about her dedication to providing for her daughter despite financial struggles. But sitting alone at that table, facing Brad's smug confidence and his lawyer's aggressive tactics, she felt hopeless. Then the courtroom doors opened quietly, and Mike walked in. Behind him came a parade of familiar faces. Mrs. Patterson with Rosie, Mr. Henderson with old Rufus, Mrs. Fletcher carrying Whiskers, and a dozen other clients from the animal hospital. Even Mrs. Hawkins was there, looking determined despite her usual role as town gossip. The judge looked surprised at the sudden influx of observers. "Dr. Brennan, I believe. You're here in what capacity?" Mike stood respectfully. "Your Honor, I'd like to offer character testimony for Ms. Coleman, if the court will allow it." Brad's lawyer objected, but the judge was curious enough to allow it. Mike took the witness stand with quiet dignity, his hands steady as he was sworn in. "Dr. Brennan," Sarah Beth's court-appointed attorney began, suddenly more confident, "how do you know the defendant?" "Sarah Beth works part-time at my veterinary practice. She's been employed there for 3 weeks. And in what capacity? Client relations and administrative support. She schedules appointments, handles billing, and most importantly, she provides comfort and support to families during difficult times with their pets." Mike's voice was calm and professional as he described Sarah Beth's work ethic, her natural empathy, and her obvious devotion to Lucy. He explained how Lucy's presence at the practice was always supervised and educational, how she helped with gentle animals under careful guidance. "Dr. Brennan," Brad's lawyer interrupted during cross-examination, "isn't it true that you've recently suffered significant personal trauma? The loss of your own family in a car accident." Sarah Beth held her breath, knowing this was the attack she'd feared. But Mike met the lawyer's gaze steadily. "Yes, I lost my wife and daughter 2 years ago. It was the most devastating experience of my life. And you don't think that trauma affects your judgment, particularly around children?" "On the contrary," Mike replied calmly, "it's given me a deeper appreciation for the precious nature of family bonds. Working with Sarah Beth and Lucy has been part of my healing process. But more than that, it's shown me what good parenting looks like." Sarah Beth's dedication to her daughter's well-being is absolute. The lawyer pressed harder. "But surely you can see how a single mother, allowing her child to spend time with a man dealing with such grief, might be questionable judgment." Mike's response was quiet but firm. "Your Honor, I've worked with families in crisis for over a decade. I've seen good parents and negligent ones. Sarah Beth Coleman is one of the finest mothers I've ever encountered. Her daughter is happy, healthy, curious, and clearly cherished. If that's questionable judgment, then we need to redefine good parenting." When Mrs. Patterson took the stand, her testimony was equally powerful. She described how Sarah Beth had comforted her during Rosie's illness, how professional and caring she'd been. One by one, the animal hospital clients spoke about Sarah Beth's character, her work ethic, her obvious love for Lucy. But it was Mrs. Hawkins who delivered the most surprising testimony. The woman who'd spent years spreading gossip about everyone in town stood up and spoke with unprecedented seriousness. "Your Honor, I've lived in Harmony Creek for 68 years. I've seen a lot of families, a lot of children. Lucy Coleman is one of the happiest, most well-adjusted children in this town. She's polite, curious, kind to animals and elderly people alike. That doesn't happen by accident. That happens because her mother is raising her right." Mrs. Hawkins paused, looking directly at Brad. "I've also seen what happens when children are used as weapons in adult conflicts. It never ends well for the child. Lucy belongs with her mother, in the home and community where she's thrived." The final witness was unexpected, Lucy herself. The judge asked to speak with her privately, and when they returned, his expression had shifted. He looked at Brad with new skepticism and at Sarah Beth with something approaching respect. "Mr. Coleman," the judge said finally, "your daughter is articulate, well cared for, and clearly devoted to her mother. While I understand your concerns about stability, the evidence presented today suggests that Ms. Coleman is providing exactly the kind of stable, loving environment that serves Lucy's best interests." He looked at the paperwork before him, then back at the crowded courtroom. "Custody will remain with Ms. Coleman. Mr. Coleman, you're welcome to pursue supervised visitation through the appropriate channels. But I see no reason to disrupt this child's current living situation. The gavel's bang echoed through the courtroom like a gunshot. Sarah Beth felt her knees give way with relief, and suddenly Mike was there, steadying her with a gentle hand on her arm. "You did it," he said quietly. "You fought for her and won." "We did it," Sarah Beth corrected, looking around at all the faces that had come to support her. "All of us." 3 months later, Coleman's country kitchen bustled with an energy it hadn't seen since before her father's death. The partnership with Brennan Animal Hospital had brought new life to both businesses. The diner now featured a small pet supply section, and the animal hospital's clients often stopped by for coffee after appointments. Sarah Beth moved between tables with renewed confidence, her smile genuine, as she served regulars and newcomers alike. The financial pressure had eased considerably with her veterinary job, and more importantly, she'd found purpose beyond mere survival. Lucy helped arrange pet toys and treats on the new shelves after school. Chattering about her friends at the animal hospital, Patches had fully recovered and been adopted by a lovely family. Benny the rabbit had learned to do tricks, and there was a new puppy named Scout who was already learning to follow Lucy around the boarding area. The afternoon sun streamed through windows that now sparkled, no longer marred by paint or the shadows of financial desperation. Sarah Beth was restocking the coffee station when she noticed Mike approaching the counter, but something was different about his usual routine. Instead of ordering his regular coffee, he placed a small black box on the counter between them. Sarah Beth's hand stilled on the coffee pot as she recognized what it meant. "Mike," she began, but he held up a gentle hand. "Before you say anything, I need you to know this isn't about rescuing you or being rescued. This is about choosing to build something together, a family, a life, a future that honors what we've both learned about loss and love and second chances." He opened the box to reveal a simple, elegant ring that caught the afternoon light. "I love you, Sarah Beth. I love your strength, your compassion, your fierce devotion to Lucy. I love the way you've helped me remember that life can be beautiful again. And I love that little girl who sees horses in her dreams and magic in everyday moments." Sarah Beth looked at the ring, then at Mike's face, then toward Lucy, who was pretending not to eavesdrop from behind the pet food display. "Lucy," she called softly. "Come here, sweetheart." Her daughter approached with barely contained excitement, her eyes wide as she saw the ring box. "Is Dr. Mike asking you to marry him, Mama?" "He is," Sarah Beth confirmed, kneeling down to Lucy's eye level. "What do you think about that?" Lucy's face broke into a radiant smile. "I think it means he'll be my forever daddy. Like I wished for when I made that wish on the star last week." Sarah Beth looked up at Mike, seeing not just love in his eyes, but the promise of a partnership built on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine affection. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes to all of it." As Mike slipped the ring onto her finger, the diner erupted in spontaneous applause. Mrs. Hawkins dabbed her eyes with a napkin. Mr. Henderson raised his coffee cup in a toast, and even the teenagers in the back booth looked up from their phones to smile at the scene. Lucy threw her arms around both adults, creating an impromptu group hug that made several customers reach for their tissues. "When's the wedding, Mama? Can we have it here in the diner? Can the animals come?" Mike laughed, the sound rich with joy and possibility. "I think we can work something out. After all, this is where our story really began." Sarah Beth looked around the transformed space. The diner that had once felt like a burden now glowed with warmth and community. The pet supply corner bustled with activity, the coffee machine hummed efficiently, and most importantly, the faces of her neighbors reflected genuine happiness for her family's new beginning. "You know," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "my father always said this place was about more than food. He said it was about bringing people together, about creating a space where everyone belonged." She squeezed Mike's hand and pulled Lucy closer. "I think he would have loved this moment. All of it." Through the large front windows, the afternoon sun painted everything in golden light. Outside, Main Street showed signs of renewal. Fresh paint on storefronts, new businesses opening, young families walking the sidewalks. Inside Coleman's country kitchen, three hearts that had known loss and loneliness had found their way to love and belonging. Mrs. Patterson approached with Rosie on a leash, the golden retriever's tail wagging at the sight of familiar faces. "Sarah Beth, honey, I just wanted to say how happy I am for you all. Mike saved Rosie's life, and watching you two together these past months, well, it's been like watching a real-life fairy tale." "Not a fairy tale," Sarah Beth corrected gently, her arm around Lucy's shoulders and her hand intertwined with Mike's. "Just life. Real, messy, beautiful life, with people who choose to love each other through it all." As the day wound down and the last customers filtered out, the three of them stood together behind the counter, looking at the ring that sparkled in the fading light. The future stretched ahead of them. Wedding plans to make, a family to build, dreams to pursue together. Lucy yawned against Sarah Beth's side, tired from the excitement, but reluctant to leave the magical atmosphere of the evening. "Mama, will Dr. Mike read me a story tonight? The one about the horses?" "I think that can be arranged," Mike said, scooping Lucy into his arms with practiced ease. "But first, how about we help your mama close up the diner? Partners help each other with everything, right?" As they worked together, wiping tables, counting the register, turning off lights, Sarah Beth marveled at how natural it felt. This wasn't just about romance or even just about family. It was about partnership in its truest sense, about choosing each day to build something meaningful together. Outside, Harmony Creek settled into evening quiet, the kind of peaceful that comes to small towns when the day's work is done. Inside Coleman's country kitchen, soon to become Coleman Brennan Family Kitchen and Pet Supply, three people who had found each other against all odds, prepared to face whatever tomorrow might bring. The last light of day streamed through the spotless windows as Sarah Beth flipped the sign from open to closed. But underneath, in Lucy's careful handwriting, a new edition read, "Where everyone belongs, especially us." The waitress had indeed taken 3 tips that night months ago: money, opportunity, and love. But what she'd given in return was immeasurable, a second chance at happiness, a reminder that courage could triumph over fear, and proof that sometimes the most unexpected offers are the ones that change everything. As they climbed the stairs to their apartment, soon to be their temporary home before they found something bigger for their growing family, Sarah Beth paused to look back at the diner one more time. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dreams to chase, new lives to touch. But tonight, surrounded by the 2 people who mattered most, she had everything she'd ever dared to hope for. The ring on her finger caught the last rays of sunlight streaming through the stairwell window, sending tiny rainbows dancing across the walls, like promises of all the bright tomorrows yet to come. Thank you for listening to this story until the end. If you enjoyed it, please support the channel, subscribe, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments so you don't miss the next episodes. See you in the next story.